The Penguins' struggles in Raleigh continued on Thursday night in a 5-1 loss against the Carolina Hurricanes, and I'm going to break down that loss for you all, plus get you all set for Penguins Capitals tonight right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. And of course, you can follow my co-host on Twitter, Patrick Damp at Syndrome for Wet. Also, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. And before we get into this 5-1 loss against the Hurricanes, for those that maybe did not listen to or watch Thursday's episode, Pat is not here on Friday because, well, he's in Mexico with his girlfriend for a wedding. So when he comes back next Tuesday, yes, he won't be on Monday's episode either. I'm sure he's going to be A, pretty hungover, and B, pretty tan. But I hope that he and his lady have an absolute blast down there celebrating a couple of their friends. But let's dive into this 5-1 loss for the Penguins, as they've now lost 8 of their last 10 games after winning 3 of their first 5 games to start this season. Honestly, this is going to sound very strange. I feel like the Penguins played a lot better tonight than some of the takes I saw on social media. The thing was, the Penguins were just never close to winning this game. That's the thing. I thought the Penguins were the better team for most of this evening. They basically outshot the Hurricanes by a 2-1 margin. It was 37-19. The underlying numbers were very good, but a few of the same issues kept popping up, especially number one, their coverage in their own zone in the first period, notably from Erik Karlsson. Erik Karlsson, peaks and valleys this season. He's had games where he's played very well, especially these last 3 before this game, of course, but then it all comes crashing down, and it's just like, what the heck were you thinking, especially in that first period? 3 games in a row, he led the Penguins in average game score, and the eye test backed that up. He was great at creating offense. He was fine in his own zone. He was good in transition, but tonight, all of that went out the window. Just not even a minute into the game, he takes the wrong angle on Jordan Martinook, not even on the right side of the ice, doesn't have the stick down. Boom, Martinook gets the scoring 1-0, not even a minute in. That's not good enough from Erik Karlsson. And then just a few minutes later, he let Sebastian Aho go right around him in the neutral zone. Karlsson really not even making an effort to impede Aho there, turns into an odd man rush, and Nedeljkovic, no shot on that second goal. And it's just like, again, where is the consistency with this player? He's had good games this season. He hasn't been fully bad all year, at least in my opinion, but his bad games are worse than his bad games from last year. I think his good games match what he did at the end of last season, but his bad games are far worse than any of the bad games that he had last year for me. And the Penguins, again, you need a much higher level from Erik Karlsson if you have any shot of getting this season back on track. And right now, I mean, we're a month into the season. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. And Mike Sullivan was pretty fed up, it felt like, after the game with the play of Erik Karlsson. He didn't specifically mention him. I was watching the post-game presser on Sportsnet Pittsburgh. I usually don't, but I really wanted to see what Sullivan had to say after this loss. And after that play on Martinook, Sullivan called it soft, or soft, as Michel Therrien once said as Penguins head coach. And it's pretty rare when he says that word. And to me, it definitely felt like that was a message, to Karlsson saying, you know what, man, it's time to be way more consistent and clean up your act in the defensive zone. And granted, yes, he has never been good in his own zone as a player, but you can't be this bad, and especially leading to 2 goals against in the first period. It's not good enough on Martinook, and it's not good enough on Aho. You're letting Aho go right around you in the neutral zone. You're not even doing anything to impede him from getting into the zone. You don't have your stick down on Martinook to even get that puck away for that chance. It's bad. It's unacceptable. That has to be better. And also, another thing that the Penguins did not get tonight was good goaltending. At a time, Nedeljkovic had allowed 4 goals on 13 shots. Coming into this game, he had a few really good starts in a row. But the thing with Nedeljkovic is if you ask him to make quite a few starts in a row, and we saw that last year, his game, kind of starts to deteriorate a little bit. And you saw that a bit in this game. I felt like the third goal, he would want that back. I don't think his movement was all the way there. And on the fourth goal, yes, there's a bit of traffic, but I still think he would want that one from Slavin back as well. He didn't give them the saves tonight. There's been a couple games where I think he's wanted a goal back, but these last three starts especially, I feel like he's been really good. Tonight wasn't near good enough. And on the other end for Carolina, Peter Kochetkov was great. I mean, the Penguins were getting some pretty good quality chances, especially on one of the power plays in the second period. Heck, even in the first period where the shots were 10-2, 10-3 at one point, the Penguins were getting good chances, but Kochetkov was right there. I mean, he was a brick wall tonight. He was very, very good for Carolina. So there's your difference. I really do think the Penguins carried play for most of this night, and it's rare when they do that against Carolina. Usually when the Penguins play the Hurricanes, these two teams will kind of take turns carrying the play. You know, you'll see the Penguins carry play for a bit, and then the Hurricanes will carry play, and then it's a seesaw, it goes back and forth. Obviously, last game, the Hurricanes carried play for basically the entire game, even when the Penguins went up 1-0 in that game in Pittsburgh. I'm like, I don't think this is going to last with the way the Penguins are playing, and sure enough, I was right. But tonight, Penguins doubled them up in shots. Again, you look at the underlying numbers, the Penguins out-attempted them 55-39. They also had 27 scoring chances for, 19 scoring chances against. They had almost 3 expected goals at 5-on-5 tonight, and they did hold Carolina to 1.44 expected goals at 5-on-5. So the Penguins, they did clean up a little bit defensively in the final 40 minutes, but those 2 gaffes from Karlsson in the first period, that cost them. And coming into this game, I was kind of like, there's really no chance for them to win just because they never play well in Raleigh, and with how hot the Hurricanes have been, this win probably would have been the biggest shock of the year so far for the Penguins. But it just stinks because I feel like for the most part, they played a pretty solid game. It's just A, 2 gaffes by Karlsson, can't have it, and B, they didn't get the goaltending. And if you want to add, say, Kochetkov was really good in his net. I thought the Penguins at 5-on-5, they were getting chances from all 4 lines, especially the Malkin, Crosby, Raquel line. I mean, they were a menace in the offensive zone. I mean, Crosby was taking Slavin to school in quite a few shifts throughout that game. He had a gorgeous pass to Raquel pretty early in the game. Raquel just shot it over the net. That's a chance that Raquel really doesn't miss too often, especially this year with the level that he's played at. So, obviously, frustrating to lose 5-1, but it's even more frustrating that even though the Penguins played well, they just were never even close to winning this game. Just goes to show how good the Hurricanes have been this year and how the Penguins have been this year. And once again, that's another loss to a playoff team from last year. They are 0-7-1 against playoff teams from last year. They would have won against the Islanders earlier this week if they would have kept the 3-1 lead, but they lost in a shootout. That would have been their only win against a playoff team from last year. So that trend continues. The Penguins, they're able to beat the teams that are kind of below them in the standings to kind of right around them in the standings, but they're not able to rise up and beat the average to above average teams so far. And it's not going to get easier tonight against the Capitals. This is a Capitals team that has played very good hockey. Alex Ovechkin is off to a great start this year, and they're getting contributions from all 4 lines. Their goaltending has been decent, and Spencer Carberry is coaching really well. I'm going to dive more into the Capitals in this second segment, but just wanted to end this segment by saying you need more from some of your players on the ice, including Erik Karlsson. And I do think while I was watching that presser on Sportsnet Pittsburgh that he was sending him a message. No, I don't think Karlsson is going to be scratched or anything like that. But it is past time for him to be way more consistent this season. He's had some good games, but he's had some really, really bad games. And if I had to make a comparison, I think so far this season, he's had a bit more bad games compared to good games. That needs to turn around ASAP. And same with Chris Letang. I don't think he played well again tonight. And again, it just really stinks to see all aspects of his game rotting away. Not even just him not creating in the offensive zone, but his skating is not there. I mean, I remember a time when he was easily able to win foot races and use his skating to his advantage. He's not doing that at all this year, and it really stinks to see. But other than that, I really don't have many other thoughts on this game against Carolina. Thought the Penguins put up a mostly good effort, but can't make those plays in the defensive zone in the first period, and you need some saves from your goaltender. So that's really all I have to say about this game against Carolina. Coming up in the second segment, I'm going to preview this game against the Washington Capitals and how Penguins can at least, again, try to get a win in this one against a very red-hot Capitals team. But before we get to that, I got to tell you all about one of our first sponsors, and that is Hims. Guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, giving you that boost of confidence so that you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable Hardmints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there is no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. There's also no insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's hims.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. That's hims.com/lockedon. And one more thing, the products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if it's appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. And we're not done. We still got to tell you all about our second sponsor, and that is Game Time. Game Time filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't even have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You have priority Game Time picks. Creation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. There's also all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. You can also have seat views. Get a full view from your seat in the app before you buy. They also have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. There's also Game Time coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, we're back here in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, and I was about to say, joined by my co-host, Patrick Dan, but of course, I'm solo for today. I've been saying that every time I host this show for the last year and change, it just comes naturally to me at this point. So I got to go back to my OG roots as hosting this show solo. But Penguins Capitals tonight in Washington, and if you are making that trip down there, I also hope that you're maybe potentially thinking about going to Steelers Commanders on Sunday. That is a very underrated trip to DC this weekend. You have Penguins Caps on Friday, followed by Steelers Commanders on Sunday. I can't recommend that trip enough. As someone who lived in the DC area for most of my life before moving to Pittsburgh, Capital One Arena, it's actually a pretty nice arena. Caps fans aren't that terrible. There's some bad eggs there, but there's bad eggs, I think, in every fan base. But if you are thinking about going to that game, or if you are going to that game in DC, you won't be disappointed. And on Sunday, it's the same thing. I expect a lot of Steelers fans taking over. I'm still going to call it FedEx Field in Landover. It's always going to be FedEx Field to me, just like how Acrisure Stadium is always going to be Heinz Field to me here in Pittsburgh. But that is a very fun trip if you're going on it. But Penguins Capitals tonight in DC, and this Capitals team, they are red hot to start this season. Right now, third in the Metro, 9-3 record. They've won 8 of the last 10 games. This is a team that's firing on all cylinders right now. And it starts with Alex Ovechkin. He has been fantastic yet again for the Capitals. 8 goals, 16 points in 12 games. He is getting very close to breaking the NHL's all-time goal record that's been held by Wayne Gretzky. And if you ask me, I think he might do it this year. If he doesn't, it's going to be early next season, but he has a very strong chance of doing it by the end of the season. And I was half joking on Twitter last week, but also kind of not. I kind of think he might break it in mid-April in the Penguins' final regular season game of the 24-25 season. Their final game it's against Washington here. And if he is, say, 1 goal away from breaking that record, he will have a very good opportunity of doing it here. And honestly, I kind of hope he does, because it kind of would be poetic with how these two teams have played so many great classic matchups against one another over the years. And I do think he would get a pretty outstanding ovation here. And he's been, again, on fire to start this season. He does not look like he is close to 40 at all, but they've also been getting really good play from Dylan Strome. Only 4 goals, but he has 15 points, 15 to 6, 19 points in 12 games. He's been a great playmaker all year. Connor McMichael, another one of their young pieces, 8 goals, 13 points in 12 games. John Carlson's almost at a point per game. You know what you're going to get from Tom Wilson. He has 6 goals, 9 points in 12 games. He's always going to be a pest to play against. But the biggest difference for Washington this year, for me, is the way they're playing in the offensive zone. I felt like last year they were more of a defensive team, and they were just kind of just getting by with, these 2-1, 3-2 wins. Charlie Lindgren was playing outstanding in net, especially down the stretch. And this year he's been totally fine, but he hasn't been nearly as good last year. But it also really hasn't mattered that much, because the Capitals are scoring at a higher clip this year compared to last year. Credit to the Capitals front office. They were able to go out there in free agency and on the trade market and add younger pieces to their lineup to not only help Ovechkin go and get the goal record, but to also make them competitive into a potential playoff team. You're seeing both of that this year. Ovechkin looks rejuvenated after last year. He's having a blast on the ice. And these younger pieces and some of these veterans they went out and acquired are performing really well. I hate saying this. I really do. But the Capitals front office has kind of skated circles around the Penguins front office these last 2 to 3 seasons, I would say. Dubas was a little late to the party. He's doing right now what McLellan was doing a bit these last couple of years in Washington. But that front office is one of the better front offices in the NHL. I mean, they added, for example, Jacob Chikrin, to the lineup over the offseason. They added Matt Roy to the lineup. Sandin was a really good acquisition. They brought in Andrew Mangiapane, Brandon Duhaime. The Pierre-Luc Dubois experiment is actually not nearly as bad to start this year as I thought it was going to be. They have a lot of very young and intriguing pieces in this lineup. And Spencer Carberry is coaching really well. There are threats on every line. I mean, you start at the top line with Ovechkin and Strome. They're playing great. McMichael's having a great year with Tom Wilson on the second line. Mangiapane is a really good depth scorer. You have Sonny Milano on that line as well. Brandon Duhaime and Nick Down on the fourth line as a good checking line. And then defensively, you have Karlsson, Ferrarvi, and we all know Ferrarvi and Crosby, they love going at each other every time they play. I'm sure it's going to be no different in this one. And then Sandin with Matt Roy. And then goaltending, you have Lindgren and Logan Thompson. It's funny, Thompson has actually outplayed Lindgren this year. Thompson has the higher save percent. He does have the higher save percentage. He's also 6-0 in his start so far with a 2.81 goals against average. So they're getting competent goaltending. They're getting depth scoring, and their stars are playing well, and they're playing well in their own zone. This is a very strong team right now. I had lower expectations for Washington this year because I really didn't. I guess I wanted to see them do this again before I bought into it. Well, I'm starting to buy into a bit more just with the way they're playing this year compared to last year. They're not being hemmed in their own zone. They're breaking the puck out a lot faster. They're getting the depth scoring, and the Penguins, they're going to have to be on high alert for every Capitals line that goes out there. Obviously, the Capitals power play, it's not what it used to be, when they had Kuznetsov in his prime on it and Backstrom with his playmaking ability, but you still always have to be aware when Ovechkin is out there from his spot on the circle. Yes, they have Wilson out there as a player that can hit you from the slot, from the net front area. Dylan Strome is a good playmaker. Karlsson can shoot bombs from the point. They have a good setup. It's just all about getting that unit to flow. So the Penguins penalty kill, which has been pretty solid this year, this is going to be another big test for them, like it always is against a Capitals power play where Ovechkin can blow a puck past you virtually any time. But Penguins to win this game, got to keep their shifts short. You have to really simplify things. You have to have Joel Blomqvist play well. He hasn't played that much lately just because Nedeljkovic has been taking up a lot of these last few starts. But I want to see how he does because there is a chance that this could be one of his final starts before he goes back to Wilkes-Barre because we're getting to the end of the line here where Tristan Jarry's conditioning stint, and it looks like just based on his numbers, based on the way he's played down there, he's probably going to get called up and maybe be given one more shot on this team. So if that happens, I think Blomqvist is going to go down, even though I'm not going to like it because of the way Blomqvist has played at the NHL level, but I'm still excited for him to get the start in this game. Sidney Crosby is going to be wide awake for this one. He always is against the Capitals. And the Penguins, it's weird when I feel like they don't play well in DC. In both games last year in DC, I felt the Penguins played two of their final performances of the season, especially late in the season when the Penguins were really pushing for the playoffs. They played great in their own zone. If they can somehow replicate that, I mean, that would be a dream come true in this one. And of course, get the goaltending in this one as well. But again, keep your shift short. Got to watch Ovechkin on the power play, especially. And at 5-on-5, you really don't want Dylan Strome to burn you. He has been, once again, a great playmaker throughout this season. It's going to be another big test for the Penguins with the way the Capitals are humming and with the way the Capitals are playing in their own zone. Spencer Carberry, I know the Capitals were a bit boring to watch last year, but he had them playing still pretty solid defense. It was a bit boring again, yes, but it was effective, and it's been very effective this year. They've had some injuries on the back end, but they're starting to get some guys back. This is going to be another big test for the Penguins forwards and how they're able to create offense in this game. So really looking forward to this one. Penguins Capitals, it really never gets old, if you ask me. I mean, I know Ovechkin's up there in age. I know Crosby, Malkin, Letang, even Karlsson to a degree, they're up there in age. But these rivalry games between these two teams, they will never, ever get old. And I am so looking forward to watching this one. It is going to feel so weird when all these players are done playing and then Penguins Capitals just goes back to being like, okay, so it's fun when these rivals play against one another, but it just won't have the same, what's the word I'm looking for here? Meat on it with how much star talent both these teams have still. But I think that will do it for this second segment. Coming up to end the show, I'm going to discuss my overall NHL season thoughts so far, as we're about a month into the season, who I think is doing well, who I'm a bit worried about, and all that good stuff. But before we get to that, I got to tell you all about our last sponsor, and that is FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. That's America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to take live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get 100 in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel. That's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hody. So I figured I would end today's show with just looking around the league. I feel like I haven't done this in a while. Heck, Pat and I really haven't done this in quite a while. But, we're a month into the season, just about. I figured it's a good time to check in on the teams outside of Pittsburgh and look at, who is surprising me, who's kind of disappointing me, and all that good stuff. And we have to start with the Winnipeg Jets, man. Holy Toledo, the way they're playing. They're 13-1 to start this season. They're getting depth scoring from all across their lineup. Their stars have been great. Kyle Connor's been awesome. Ehlers has been awesome. Morrissey is showing why he's a #1 defenseman. Scheifele's been great. Hellebuck has been him, as the kids like to say, in net. This Winnipeg team has really surprised me this year, because heading into the season, I was kind of like, okay, they're a playoff team, but they kind of got embarrassed by the Avalanche in the playoffs last year. What's going to give here? Was that the best that we could see from that Jets group? Well, I've been dead wrong so far, because they won 13 of their first 14 games. This team is a ton of fun to watch. We saw that on display a few weeks ago when the Penguins went on their Western Canada trip. And even when they went up 2-0, the Penguins, that is, it never felt like the Jets were out of that game with the way they're scoring this year. And you saw that on display. This team has been a ton of fun to watch. But in contrast, I am a little bit worried about the Boston Bruins. Yes, I know they did win tonight, but they haven't had the horses this year. Marchand's been fine. Pasternak's been fine, but Swayman heading into tonight, he was below 900 for his save percentage. They're still looking to try and getting him going. Lindholm heading into tonight hasn't been playing that well, but did have a pretty good game tonight at home. They're still working in some of these pieces, but I'm still a bit concerned because you look up and down this Bruins team, it's not nearly as deep. And if they're not able to figure this out, I will be curious to see what the Bruins do at the end of the season. For example, say this is the year they miss the playoffs. Are they going to fire Jim Montgomery? I mean, if the Penguins move on from Mike Sullivan at any point during this season or after the season and Montgomery also gets fired by the Bruins, that is someone I would really love the Penguins to go after. I think Jim Montgomery is one of the better head coaches in the NHL. And honestly, if both those things happen, we can potentially see a coaching change, like just both coaches swapping, I should say. Sullivan maybe going to Boston. I know his first tenure there really didn't work out, but I feel like compared to then with now, he's a better coach. Obviously, he's won a lot more. And I do think it's time for Sullivan to just have a change of scenery. I think I've been saying it so many times on the show. I think he's lost his way here, and I think he's hit his expiration date. It's been here for, at least probably a year now. I know a lot of people have been arguing for longer. Totally understand you. I really didn't get there until the end of last season. Yes, I know I was a bit late on that. You can dunk on me for that if you want. But still, I would not be surprised if, maybe that happens and you see, those two coaches swap. But Jim Montgomery would be one of the people on my short list if the Penguins were to make a coaching change and the Bruins were to make a coaching change as well. And ditto for Nashville. Andrew Brunette, I do feel like is a pretty good coach, especially with his offensive systems, but Nashville really needs to figure this out. They spent a lot of money this year, especially on Brady Shea, on Jonathan Marchessault, and Steven Stamkos, but they're not acclimated with them yet. They're just not playing as a team yet. And usually Saros, I know he usually starts seasons a bit slow, but this start from Nashville is uncharacteristically slow, I think. And if this doesn't figure it out, Barry Trotz said to the media this week, I'm not sure if he was joking or not, but he was like, yeah, if this doesn't work itself out, I'm gonna have to start my rebuild plan. So he's not happy with the way things are going down in Smashville. So curious to see if they figure that out. In the Metro Division, you have Carolina obviously off to a great start with a 10-2 record. They've won 8 in a row. The Hurricanes, they do this stuff during the regular season, but to me, it's all about how they play in the playoffs. When you get them in the playoffs, the opposing coaching staff is only able to focus on them, and they're able to, tactically adjust to what Rod Brindamore does. And I still feel like they could use another scorer or two in the lineup. So that's going to be something to watch down the stretch as well. But they're definitely performing a bit better than I thought they would, at least to start the season. I think the Rangers, they've been good 8-3-1, but I feel like they still have another level to reach. From the Atlantic, the Panthers are picking up where they left off. They've won 6 in a row. They've been great. Toronto, they're at 500 right now, second place in the Atlantic, but I still feel like, obviously they're a playoff team, but I'm not sure how deep they're going to go. Tampa Bay, they've lost a few in a row. They'll be fine, but I still feel like they could use a bit more depth. But then you have some of the disappointments in the conference. Montreal, they can't defend to save their lives. Ottawa has been hit or miss throughout the season. I still feel like I'll believe it when I see it when it comes to them making the playoffs. When you go back to the Western Conference, Minnesota has been a ton of fun to watch this year. The Penguins just saw them last week. If Kaprizov keeps this up, I think he's going to be in the Hart conversation. I think he's definitely going to try to get them to the playoffs as well. Colorado is scaring me a bit. They're 6-8 through their first 14 games, but they've also been severely banged up. They've had defensemen playing in forward spots this season. So I think Colorado is probably going to figure it out, but this has been a pretty slow start by their standards. In the Pacific, I think Edmonton, yes, slow start. They haven't been able to finish. They've been one of the worst finishing teams in the league, but they did just get McDavid back. I think he's going to be just fine. I think the Oilers are going to be just fine, but they got to start waking it up here a little bit. Vancouver, I think they'll be totally fine. They're going to move up the rankings. But Vegas, so many people I feel like wrote off Vegas this year. And I'm like, people, you still realize that they have a very deep forward group, and defensively, they're still pretty strong. And, oh, yeah, Bruce Cassidy's still a very good coach. So I don't understand why so many people were writing off Vegas heading into this year. I even saw a few people saying that they were going to miss the playoffs. I'm like, what? I just really don't know what they were talking about. But those are some of my miscellaneous NHL thoughts for the first month of the season. we still very much know right now, at least in my opinion, who the contenders are in the East. You have Florida, you have the Rangers, the Capitals are starting to get into that category. I still think they're a playoff team that can maybe win a round or two right now, but I don't see them as a contender. New Jersey is playing well. I have them more of a contender than the Capitals right now. In my opinion, you have Toronto, who I don't think they're a bona fide contender, but they're at least a playoff team that can maybe win a round or two if they get the right matchup. But in terms of contenders in the East, I would say my top two right now are still Florida and New York. And in the West, Winnipeg very much. Vegas is up there. And I know they've had slow starts, but Vancouver and Edmonton are also up there as well. And of course, you can throw in Dallas. I still think the West is a bit deeper than the East so far this season. But I think that'll do it for today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch me just ramble about the Penguins, preview this game against the Capitals, and then ramble my thoughts about the first month of the season as a whole. I'll be back on Monday with another episode of this podcast, hopefully with Jesse Marshall for Marshall Mondays. Remember, this past Monday, he had something for work come up, but we're hoping this Monday his schedule will be fully clear and he'll be able to join me for Marshall Mondays. And then Pat, he'll be back for Tuesday's episode and the rest of the episodes going forward, unless he has to go out of the country again. But that will do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Again, really appreciate all of you listening to / watch this one. If you haven't already, leave a like on this episode on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and give us a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, all of that good stuff. But for myself, thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back on Monday.